Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1 Kim Owen. We are honoured to welcome Mr. Alex McGowan, President of the Naval Association of Australia, ACT Section. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. You may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Steward George Clarence Hawker. Born on the 3rd of March 1918 in the Perth suburb of Subiaco, the son of Teresa and George Hawker. George's father died when he was young. His mother went on to remarry, but divorced soon after, with acrimonious divorce proceedings publicly reported in the newspapers, featuring young George's own testimony. George joined the Royal Australian Naval Reserve in 1937. After training at HMAS Cerberus, he transferred to HMAS Sydney at the end of August 1939. By then, it was apparent that the situation in Europe was grim. When war broke out in September 1939, Sydney received a draft of an additional 135 ratings from the Fremantle Division of the Royal Australian Naval Reserve before beginning exercises off the Western Australian coast and beginning patrol and escort duties. Ordinary seaman George Hawker was mobilised for full-time duty on Sydney, one of 3 British modified Leander-class light cruisers. Shortly after Hawker was rated steward on the 12th of February 1940. In May, Sydney joined the British Mediterranean Fleet. During the 8-month deployment, Sydney covered herself in glory, sinking 2 Italian warships, famously including the Italian cruiser Bartolomeo Colleoni. Participating in multiple shore bombardments and providing support to the Malta convoys while receiving minimal damage and no casualties. On her return to Australia in February 1941, Sydney received a hero's welcome. Sydney was then tasked with escorting troop ships to Southeast Asia, following an Indian Ocean route along the coast of Western Australia. On the return of one of these voyages, Sydney encountered the HSK Corriman on the afternoon of the 19th of November 1941. Disguised as a Dutch merchant vessel, the Corriman used the advantage of surprise and brought all its armaments to bear on Sydney. Hoisting the German ensign, Corriman uncovered her armament and opened fire. 2 ranging shots pitched short and over respectively, then a full salvo hit, smashing the Sydney's bridge structure and director tower. Simultaneously, Corriman fired 2 torpedoes. Her automatic 2-centimetre anti-aircraft guns and rapid-firing 3.7-centimetre anti-tank guns played onto the cruiser's bridge and amidships, where the 2 port 4-inch guns of the secondary armament and the torpedo tubes were mounted. Sydney replied with a salvo from her 6-inch guns that tore over the Corriman. However, the cruiser's forward turrets were knocked out by the Raiders' 3rd and 4th salvos. Then the 5th caught Sydney's aircraft on the catapult, wrecking it and spreading burning fuel over the ship amidships. About this time, Sydney's aft turrets came into action, firing in local control. Y turret fired 2 or 3 unsuccessful salvos before falling silent, but X turret opened a rapid and accurate fire, which hit Corriman in the funnel, engine room, and electrical installations, starting uncontrollable fires. Shortly after this, one of the Raiders' torpedoes hit the Sydney abreast her forward turrets. Within 5 minutes of the commencement of the actions, both ships were mortally wounded. Sydney, down by the bow, turned sharply to port onto a southerly course as if to ram Corriman or to bring her starboard torpedo tubes to bear. She passed close astern under fire from the Raiders' aft guns. At 5:45, as the range opened, the cruiser fired her 4 starboard torpedoes at the Raider, all of which narrowly missed astern. About the same time, Corriman's engines broke down. As Sydney struggled off to the south, she was hit repeatedly by Corriman's portside guns, and at 6 o'clock, the raider fired a torpedo from her port underwater tube, which missed. Corriman continued to fire until her own engine room was wrecked and uncontrollably ablaze. As a raider, she was finished, and mindful of her full cargo of mines, her captain ordered her abandoned. As the crew left Corriman, scuttling charges were set. They were fired at midnight when the last of the crew had departed. At 12:30, the mines exploded and the Corriman sank. Of her crew of 393 officers and men, 78 lost their lives, either in the action or the sea afterwards. 2 captured Chinese were also killed. Sydney was last seen about 10 miles away, ablaze and limping off into the gathering evening. Her glare could be distinguished until 10 o'clock, and then only occasional flickerings, which had ceased by midnight. Of her complement of 645, none survived. Among the dead was Steward George Clarence Hawker, who was 23 years old. In March 2008, the Australian government announced that the wrecks of the Sydney and Corriman had been found, approximately 112 nautical miles off Steep Point, Western Australia, putting an end to the mystery of the final resting place of these vessels. But with no grave but the sea, George Hawker and the other members of Sydney's crew are commemorated at the Plymouth Naval Memorial in England. George Hawker's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his name listed on the Plymouth Naval Memorial in England is displayed beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Steward George Clarence Hawker, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea, no flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, afast on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. And we'd like to wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.